Okay, so we'll call this meeting of the Economic Development Commission Subcommittee on Project Development Support. We'll call the meeting to order. It's 5:02. I don't believe we have any members of the public here for public comment. So we'll move right on to approval of the minutes from our last meeting, which was February 17th. Man, it's just you and me tonight, so.
I approve them.
I'll second your motion if you want, and then discuss, or if there's no discussion, we'll just approve.
I think you're the only two members, so.
There we go. All right, so moved. Oops. Next, we have our discussion items, which I'm assuming we're turning this over to Linda, and you'll kind of walk us through these different projects.
So yes, and I will apologize. The first one I haven't really even had time to look at. I can tell you, I know generally what they're going for. So the first application that's on your agenda is related to an application to amend the zoning regulations to establish a new type of zoning district. So they're calling it the mixed use center transition. And this is intended to be applied to properties that have that designation in the future land use plan from the Plan of Conservation and Development. And they're essentially, when the Planning and Zoning Commission was doing that mapping, they found that there were some properties that were abutting single family neighborhoods, and they wanted to see a step down in terms of intensity and not just have, PB3 all the way up to it. So this particular applicant, the reason they're proposing to create this new district is they're actually interested in developing a piece of property at Four Corners that has that future land use designation. It's Mike Taylor's about 20-acre property that is located adjacent to where the medical marijuana dispensary used to be located. And then there's a single family house and then Timber Drive, I believe. So basically across the street from the standard at Four Corners. And they came into the Planning and Zoning Commission back in February with a pre-application showing just rows of 4-story townhouses and an office building in front. And I think the commission looked at the plan and just went, this is not, I think they had a lot of concerns in terms of the scale adjacent to Timber Drive, and basically said, we think you need to reduce the number of units, we think you need to try something else. And I give the applicant credit. They talked with staff after that. They also met with the Regulatory Review Committee from the Planning and Zoning Commission and said, okay, let's talk about some ideas and we'll go back and work on this. And they actually ended up bringing in a consultant out of Texas to help with this, to do a more, the consultant will say, will not call it a form-based code, but I have, let's talk about like physical context based code or something to that effect. So if you open the attachment that says Mansfield-Transition District Proposed Code 13 May, what you're going to see is something that's very different from what our zoning regulations are today. And I would say probably the closest example that I would give is Store Center to an extent, except this, instead of having separate design guidelines that were done as part of the zoning map for Store Center, this particular district brings all of that design and puts it into the district itself, with the idea of saying, okay, we're going to spell out what you need to do from a design perspective and how you're going to manage the transitions from multifamily housing or townhouses and office or some other type of commercial use to an abutting area that is lower in scale. And so it starts out talking about different types of buildings. So, and I think that's something, again, this is a new approach for us. So as opposed to simply saying, here's your property, here's your setback, you can build to 3 stories, 4 stories. It talks about what you have to do for different types of buildings. And so they've identified a mixed use building and a middle residential building are what they're proposing here. The middle residential building is essentially, an opportunity for multiple units, but in a building that's similar in character to a large house. So, and so one of the things they're proposing is 2.5 stories would be the maximum height, pitch roof, and they've given some photos, and I'm going to share my screen just to kind of give you an idea of the different, and then they also have the mixed use building where you could have a mixture of uses, and then upper story office. You could have potentially retail on the first floor. So let me share my screen. So this gives you an idea. These are some of the photos that they provided of potential, you know, what a mixed use building might look like. And then they go into detail. And so that these diagrams and the dimensions then help with massing and scale and tell you where your buildings should be located. In this case, you know, 50% of the ground floor would need to be windows. So, you know, that you start to get to some of these design perspectives so that you're not creating blank walls facing the street, for example. And you have to have entrances and doors, things of that nature. So the middle residential building, this gives you a little bit of an idea. You can see this would, you know, much different from, I would say, rows of 4-story townhouses, which is, I think, what they had been contemplating, that all would have garages on the first floor. And so trying to make this look a little bit more residential, keep it lower scale, given the abutting residential neighborhoods. And they've given a few examples. So some of these units might have attached garages, some may not. And I think, you know, one of the things that, from the perspective that, or from the goal that we've had of trying to focus some of our housing design on non-student populations, I think this, at least, you know, I think we're hoping this may be going in that direction, where you're now getting an opportunity where you have a front door and you have a garage, and, you know, something that may be a little bit more appealing to a professional or a family, to have that kind of private entrance, as opposed to just being, you know, the more intense model where you're a doorway off a hallway in a larger building.
Steve or Linda, can I ask a quick question?
Yep.
So Linda, going back to the photos, and I know those are just photos.
Yep.
So let's just take, for example, the one on the bottom. Like how many apartments could potentially fit into that?
I don't know.
Okay.
And that's something we'd have to ask them. And I honestly, I will tell you that one of the concepts that the committee discussed with the applicant was the idea of, and this is something we're seeing in terms of best practices for the missing middle housing, and the idea of is focusing less on a density number than on the form, and basically saying, if you limit the size of the building. So in this case, one of the things, and again, I have not looked at this, so I wanted to see if they have, they've got a maximum length. They don't have a maximum depth, and so we'll have to see if density comes along with this. But one concept with the missing middle housing is to say, if you outline basically your envelope and say your building can be no more than X feet wide, X feet deep, and X feet tall, you can put as many units inside that envelope as you want, because we're controlling the mass and scale. And so, you know, I don't know what they're looking for in here. And again, I haven't had a chance to go through this yet to really kind of dig into density and other things. And I will say the town is hiring. We have a consultant that's going to be working on our overall rewrite. The Planning and Zoning Commission authorized retaining them for peer review of this, because we're like, this is definitely, I would say, you know, very new for the town. So we want to get their input on, whether they think how they think this works. And the fact that I'm not going to be here to review this is another reason for that. So,
thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. I was wondering whether. So you can see it's also a very graphic document that kind of gives, a lot of detail on how to do different things. And I think that's one of the I think one of the things that will maybe appealing is it's going to provide a developer a lot of guidance, in clarity in terms of here's what you need to do. And, you know, by spelling all of that out, you know, this is 42 pages for one district. So it's not short, but at the same time, it's providing somebody with the detail of what they need to do. So I don't anticipate, I think the public hearing on this will likely be in July. So I think there's going to be time to dig into this. I will say that, you know, when we met with the applicant, the regulatory review committee said, look, if you want to come up with this district, great. We think at this point you should be focusing on the Four Corners transitional districts. And so, you know, when they come in to actually map the district, they may be working with other property owners to say, hey, do you want to join into this district, so that we're not just doing 1 20-acre lot, but we're actually looking at other parcels that have that same designation. Any questions? Again, this is a lot to absorb, and we literally got this last Friday when we had to publish our packet, and have not had a tremendous amount of time to go through it at this point. But
I have two. So obviously I haven't read through this in great detail, but is there provisions for different densities, or I guess more massing is more the right word, different massing close to the property line versus further into the parcel, and maybe different massing adjacent to Timber Drive versus maybe 195? So like, whereas it might be more appropriate to have a, you know, a 1.5 or 2-story building next to existing houses, if you're along 195, maybe you could have a bigger building because it would match what's going on across the street a little bit better.
I'm going to have to dig into it. I think just by very nature of the mixed use building, so the mixed use buildings are definitely, from what I could see, they're looking at a 3-story height maximum on the 3-story buildings. And that one is, the intent there is that we'd actually be very close to Storrs Road. So like, you know, similar to what's going on across the street, that building would be brought forward. Mm-hmm. And that there would be no parking between between the existing street. They're also introducing the concept of what they're calling a spine street, so that if you have more than a certain amount of frontage, and I think it's 300 feet, that you need to basically include a kind of an internal street for your project. And so that's how a lot of these requirements regarding massing and windows and doors, by saying, okay, you're going to include this. And I believe, let me see, it actually does provide street rules. And so it talks about, okay, here's what your streetscape should look like on an existing street. Here's what your streetscape and your travel way should be for a spine street that it's going through. And so including spaces, you know, parallel parking. It's got, you know, the you know, what I would call the, you know, the green area between the sidewalk and the curb. So it does have, you know, a lot of info. It does provide a lot of detail in here on how to design various components.
Okay. So I guess that's question number one. Question number two, and I know we kind of sort of did this with Shepherd when we did the rewrite for the Four Corners. But are we, how do you see, or how does the PZC see having an applicant kind of write the regulations as opposed to having PZC write the regulations? Are they comfortable with that approach? Because the applicant's kind of like setting the baseline we work off of. And do we want to have them kind of benchmark where we start, or do we want to benchmark where we start?
I think in this case, you know, it's always timing. So in this case, you know, they have a contract on a piece of property, and the property owner saying you need to decide what you're going to do, and you need to show some forward momentum in going through with that. So, you know, I can tell you that, and we can share the video when they presented to the Regulatory Review Committee after they had retained Code Studio out of Austin. That's probably the most animated I've seen them, and they liked the direction this was going. So, and it's a big lift, and so I think part of it was like, oh, you know, I think there is going to be refinement. Like I'm going through the uses, and I'm like, oh, you know, this is going to be, you know, one of those items where there are certain things they're pulling in terms of uses that look like it's from a draft of new regulations that we haven't adopted yet. So we'll have to figure out how to address some of these. It's just going to have to be based on our current uses. But again, I think, you know, folks will be going through this in a lot more detail. But I think this is at least the regulatory review members we're excited about this, because we're getting, you know, it's moving in a direction that's being very specific and saying, look, this is what we're looking for. As opposed to putting things in tables and charts and narrative, it's showing exactly, you know, this is what you should be doing to create a good space.
And then Linda, maybe just sort of your personal opinion on it. It seems to me that this is a great transitional zone. This parcel is a great transitional zone because you have kind of a natural break with the wetlands right after this. Like, so if you're heading, I guess it's north on 195, you have the Four Corners and the Standard, and then you have a big wetland system, and then after that you have a bunch of residential homes, right? So this would kind of be a nice buffer, because then you hit the wetlands and then all that residential stuff. So it seems to make a lot of sense, unless you think long term we would see further development down 195.
You know, that's not what's in our plan. Our plan kind of stops it. That is, you're right. That's kind of a natural barrier where you have the cedar swamp there. You know, the transitional zones, we have a few identified in the Four Corners area. So, you know, this side of Storrs Road, kind of from that wetland back towards 320 is that kind of transitional area. There are some parcels on 44 headed east. So for example, the Shepherd property located next to Cumberland Farms, I think some of the smaller pieces, or one or two of the smaller pieces on the south side of 44 may have this. And then we also see this designation when you're on 44 headed westbound, where we see, you know, again, this idea of we want to have something that's a little bit more, you know, transitioning to a neighborhood. The golf course actually has the future land use designation. They're not proposed for a not mixed use center transitional, but a compact residential transitional. So I think that's something, you know, we're going to be talking to our consultants about as well, as, you know, that I think this is going to set the stage for, like, okay, you know, if the commission likes this, I think you're going to see more regulations going in this direction, that really, again, are really focusing on building form, massing, orientation, as a way to get, and it's really hybrid, because if it were true just form, we wouldn't talk about uses. They are talking about uses. So in this case, you know, it's the mixed use center transitional. And I think some of it is just going to be, where is this being proposed? You know, I just from past discussions, I know that if this were proposed on the Shepherd property, you probably are going to have some neighbors saying, no, we don't want to see that there. And so, you know, but that at this point, again, this particular applicant is focused on the property they're trying to purchase and saying, okay, this is what we're looking at. And then it's, you know, where else might this fit?
Great. Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Yep.
So would this be connected to the sewer system?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and I think that's one thing, anytime you start talking about multifamily, it really, you know, public water and sewer just becomes such a big piece of that, because it's difficult to do otherwise. So the next item on the agenda was project updates. And I'm trying to remember the last time we met, I think was either just before or just after the standard at Four Corners was approved. So that was approved by the Planning and Zoning Commission. They're in right now for a modification regarding sidewalk extensions and when they have to be done to the edges of their property. We also, I will say, we've had some folks that have been in the process that have withdrawn, and it's usually due to time constraints. So for example, we had an special permit application for the redevelopment of Champagne Motors on the south side of, or down by Eastbrook Mall. And the proposal is to take a large section off the south side of the building, part of their service center. And then they would be doing a new about 8,500 square foot mixed or commercial building with a couple of drive-through facilities. And that application, I will say, was submitted to us in January, and it was immediately put on hold because there were some unresolved wetlands issues that they had to go out and investigate. And it was January, and it was hard to investigate whether or not there was a vernal pool behind them in the middle of January. So by the time they completed that and then came back, they said we had already, kind of identified and flagged some items on their plans from a technical issue. They said, just review them as they are. And I will say that both our wetlands and stormwater consultants, as well as our traffic engineering consultants, identified some pretty significant issues that they needed to go back and work on. And unfortunately, because they had been a holding pattern since January on the vernal pool, there was just not enough time. We were actually going to have to open the hearing this past Monday on the 16th and continue it to another night and hope that it closed that night. And just given the comments, it just was not feasible. So they've withdrawn, but I expect that, they're working on it and will be coming back. I would say similar thing happened with the golf course at Four Corners and redevelopment of that property. They had submitted for a wetlands license, and the initial set of comments that they got back from our peer reviewers, again, led to some substantial need for some substantial redesign. I think at one point they may have had like a 40-foot tall retaining wall, and our consultants were like, that is a lot of earth movement. I think they've gotten it down to 20 or 25 feet now. But so they, again, just from a timing standpoint, to do what they needed to do, they withdrew. And usually we get letters that basically say, yes, we're withdrawing, but we'll be coming back. We just need, we don't have the time to do what we need to do. So we've got those projects. I'm trying to think of.
Is there a cost to that? Like when they apply and then withdraw, when they reapply, so you pay a certain application fee and then. Okay.
Yep, they have to pay it again. So on the wetland side, I will say that's typically not as bad. Those fees are more nominal. But so for example, the standard at Four Corners, they had to withdraw and resubmit for timing, and a lot of their timing had been driven by UConn's intervention in the wetlands application and negotiations that were happening on that side before everything kind of blew up, and then UConn backed off. And when they came back, that fee is, I want to say for them, was probably about $17,000. And they did ask when they had to resubmit if the town would waive that. We don't have any provisions to waive those fees. So that was, another hefty fee for them to submit. But
that was for wetlands, or that was for the?
That was planning and zoning. So what we do, I will say what we do with these projects, that when we have peer review, is when they resubmit, we just have the Planning and Zoning Commission select the same consultant that started the project, even though it's technically a new application, because we don't want to bring in someone new that hasn't looked at it. It's like, nope, we just want to continue on with that consultant. And usually what the applicants will do is they've given us a deposit for those consulting fees, and we just hold on to it and then draw down from it when they resubmit, so that we're not refunding money, and unless they come to us and say, we're not going to resubmit, we want our money back, in which case we'll do a refund.
So they can get their money back?
For consulting fees, if we haven't
Okay.
spent them on consulting fees, not on the work that we've done.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
So a couple other things. Kirby Mill submitted a modification request to the commission to do a tasting room in the mill. They had their public hearing on Monday evening. Very well attended. We had a speaker, and we had one speaker in support. We had many emails in support, and then we had several speakers in opposition. that either own property or lived in the neighborhood, and that were concerned about hours of operation, traffic. They're already experiencing some speeding and nuisance behavior associated with the park. So we had the hearing, it closed on Monday night. So I expect the commission will be making a decision at their next meeting. They did not have competing people to work, did not get volunteers to work on competing motions. So at this point, it will be an approval motion. I think the devil will be in the details in terms of what they allow. So, but it was a very emotional evening for a lot of people. I think everyone is very personally invested in that area, whether you're the business owner or the residents. They're all, you know, it's very close to home for each and every one of them. And so it was emotional, but people came out and they talked about what their concerns were and voiced those to the commission, and we'll see where the commission takes it.
It's a pretty unique spot. I can't think of too many others where you have like a historic factory type building in such a tiny little, you know, historic village district.
Yeah, it's, you know. Yeah, no, and they talked a lot about this, the narrowness of the roads, you know, the pedestrians, you know, some of the things that are already happening down there. I think, you know, some of the main concerns were the proposed hours of operation. And then the applicant indicated verbally during the presentation that they would be open to shortening some of those, because I think they had open until 10 on Fridays and Saturdays or Thursday. I can't remember exactly which days, but I think the 10 o'clock was a big concern. And obviously we have some wineries in the area, and the applicant was very upfront in saying that they are not Cassidy Hill. They have no desire to be Cassidy Hill. And, you know, because they're well aware of the issues that are happening in Coventry, and that's just not what they're looking to do. So they're thinking more low key, come in, you know, they have a lot of historic artifacts associated with the mill, and they're hoping to be able to do, for those who are interested, tours of the building associated with wine tasting. So different stop, different wine, different view, different story.
Great.
They're going to have a special sommelier to pair wines with machinery and things like that.
I don't know. But they did show some photos, and I will say, Cynthia and I have toured the building. And you know, there are some very, very cool things in that building. They showed pictures of the vault. They talked about the clock tower, and I'm like, all I could say with the clock tower is, I hope they're not taking folks on the tour you and I went on. I think that's going to need some railings if they want to do that. But it's a very cool building, and again, they've invested a lot. They're very passionate, and the homeowners are just as passionate as about keeping, you know, their quiet residential neighborhood, and the commission, I think, is going to try and find a balance. So
Linda, what are some of the issues with Cassidy Hill Vineyards that they're experiencing in Coventry?
I think it mainly has to do with my understanding is they were having Friday night summer music events during the summer, and that they get hundreds of vehicles. And so we had a property owner in Mansfield Hollow. They don't have a house there. It's passive recreation property for them, but they live near Cassidy Hill. And so they kind of spoke to some of the complaints about speeding and drunk driving and, you know, intoxication and what they're dealing with. But that, in talking with the town planner, it sounds like most of the issues seem to revolve around those specifically those Friday night events. So, I'm just trying to see if there's any other projects to give you updates on. I think those are the main ones. The other one that I will provide is Eagleville Green. So you may remember that's the mixed income housing project on South Eagleville Road. The town applied for a $4.85 million grant in January, a portion of which would contribute to help bridge the gap in financing for that project, and then the remainder would go towards pedestrian safety and traffic circulation improvements on South Eagleville Road. And I'm happy to report that we received that grant in full. So we're trying to push that forward and get moving, but we'll be doing some sewer. The town is providing matches with ARPA funds, including some sewer improvements that will eliminate the need for Eagle Green to have their own pump station. So our very talented and brilliant assistant town engineer came up with a concept design that would eliminate that need for a pump station, and with the town is going to do that work that's in the right of way, and then on the Wrights Village site to connect into the pump station as part of our local match for the project. And the other benefit of that revised design when it's done is that we will actually be able to serve another 3 properties off of that line. So multiple benefits. And then pedestrian safety, the concept right now, and obviously it's going to have to be refined, is hopefully trying to introduce a median between Separatist and Storrs Road as a way to both beautify the entrance and also slow traffic down. So if we can narrow the travel lanes, provide some pedestrian refuge on crossing, etc. So,
Separatist or Maple?
I think it actually starts a little bit west of Maple. So between, and again, that was just a concept that we pulled together for the grant. A lot of refinement and design is going to be needed there.
Okay. Great, awesome.
So,
So the next piece that's coming up for public comment would be Mike Taylor's piece on 195, or specifically the zone regulations that we have in our packet tonight.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So that's the next one. As I said, I expect that we'll be getting, if 106 Storrs Road, the Champagne Motors hadn't withdrawn, I would have had that in your packet tonight, but they withdrew. But again, I think they're going to be coming back. And we have some other folks we've been talking to, so we'll see where they are in the process and when they end up submitting.
Great.
So Linda and Steve, so the next date for this, I'm sorry, let me back up. The next EDC meeting is July 21st and then August 18th, I think. So is that something, you said something about the hearing?
I think the
July.
hearing at this point, Jennifer has prepared a initial, conceptual schedule that would put the hearing potentially either first week in July or the third week in July on this. And a lot of it will depend on, how much feedback there is once folks go through the application in detail and provide comments to the applicant.
So the EDC's role would come, will this subcommittee and potentially the EDC role would come after that?
I think if you have comments, you can start reading it. And if you want to have a special meeting, this has the gist of it. There will definitely be refinements working with our consultant, just looking at the draft, and the applicant's expecting that as well. This was something they had hoped to be able to give to staff before it was received by the commission, and unfortunately they got it to us Friday morning. And at that point, all we were doing was, uploading it to our packet and and getting it published. We weren't doing any type of review and comment.
So it's possible, Steve, that at the July EDC meeting, there could be some discussion. We could put this in the packet and have
You don't have it. So there's no June meeting, Cynthia?
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I skip June?
You did. I was like,
I wasn't going to say anything. I was looking for another month off there.
I'm like, by the time you get to July, it's gonna be too late. But
yes, June.
Why do that?
June 16th.
Yeah, so I think the way I would and I would certainly welcome Lane's opinion on this one, but I think maybe Lane and I will kind of dig in, review this, and then we can kind of powwow and maybe draft some type of letter or response to submit once public comment is open. And then we can have that ready for whatever meeting would be appropriate, our June or July meeting, based on whatever the open public comment, if that sounds good to you, Lane, or.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, are people asking us to do this? Are we doing this sort of sua sponte, or just trying to make sure I understand where this is coming from?
I think we're being proactively vocal.
Got it. Proactive is good.
All right. That was a lot of updates, but I'm assuming that's the end of the line there.
It is. So the other update I have for you is this is my last meeting with you.
Will you be at the 6 o'clock?
I can be. Yep.
You know, you don't have to. I mean, I think Steve and Lane and I can do the update if you
So
have other things that you need to do. Just a
some
few
other things I need to do, but we'll see.
This is really embarrassing, but what's happening with you, Linda?
Oh,
I have accepted a position with the city of Wilmington, North Carolina. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
So the press release, I think, was just going out today, so I can officially announce that now, but I'm going to be the new director of planning and development services for the city. So.
Wow. Well, since there's really not any growth going on down there, that should be super easy. So.
You know, somebody asked Linda about that. My parents lived there for almost 30 years, and I was just like, I just kept my mouth shut, and Linda was able to obviously answer it, and it was funny. It's like,
Yeah, no, it is a
changed lot over the
very,
years.
very fast growing area. So they were projecting, and I think the plan I saw was a few years old and projecting an increase of 60,000 people by 2030 or 2035. So
Wow.
just the whole area is booming, but they're doing a lot of cool things, and it's gonna put me closer to my family, get me down to the place I'm ultimately going to retire with, because that's where my family is. And so all good things.
Great.
Well, Linda, you've been an integral part of our town during a very, very transformational time for us, starting with the Mansfield Tomorrow vision and all the meetings, and then the reformation of the EDC, and we couldn't have done it without you. So thank you for all you've done for our town.
Thank you.
Really
You know, it has been my pleasure. It's been an honor and a privilege. And this was a hard decision for me. Like Cynthia is aware, I agonized over this a lot, because I really do love working in Mansfield and the people I work with. And, you know, it literally had to come down for me to just really, this is an incredible opportunity, and, you know, professionally and personally. So
Congratulations.
thank you. And I will be in touch, Steve. It's just my house is a little bit of a shambles right now with boxes and purging and
Understood.
trying to get rid of stuff. I'm like, okay, I can't have a realtor or anyone else in this house right now. I need to just deal with that. Everyone's just like, it doesn't matter, Linda, just get him in and just sell it.
Yeah, sort of. Yep. Right now, that's the time for sure. So but yeah, whenever as things work out.
But yeah, so that's my big news. So Jennifer is going to be taking over as interim until the position is filled. The position was posted today. I expect that there will be a lot of interest in it. So, and I can say that, you know, that if you look at the announcement in the job description, that one of, you know, Ryan's goals is really to maintain the close working relationship with Cynthia as the economic development coordinator, and really keeping that and making sure that whoever succeeds me, you know, kind of approaches things, you know, with an open mind and understanding the link between economic development and planning and, you know, so
do you get to be on the search committee?
I'm not going to be here. So
there's Zoom meetings and stuff.
Only if they want to do them at night, I think, at this point. So I start my new job on July 5th. And
oh, wow.
Between now and then, I am, you know, packing up, moving, and hopefully getting a few weeks to relax, have some relaxation so that I'm somewhat rested before I start.
Awesome. Very good.
All right.
Well, on that note, so do we have an upcoming meeting scheduled for our working group here, Cynthia?
What, normally every 3 months?
Yep. So it is August 18th.
And if Lane and I wanted to powwow just to kind of draft something between now and then, would it have to be like a special meeting, or could we just kind of get together and do that?
Well, yeah.
Special,
you
I'll
wouldn't be
I'll
making
answer.
any, like-
I'll be the bad guy, Cynthia, I'm leaving. It's a special meeting.
Okay, so we'll figure out between the two of us when that's appropriate, and then we'll figure out how we schedule a special meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I can I can help you with that, obviously,
Okay.
so.
Awesome. Okay, anything else for tonight for the good of the order? Then I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
And we'll see you guys in 18 minutes.
I
Okay.
All right, thanks,
Bye-bye.
everybody.